Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something, well, it's surprisingly common, and man, is it misunderstood. Adults living with undiagnosed autism.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just those clinical diagnoses, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about like really understanding how autism, even in those subtle ways, can impact people's lives, even if they don't ever receive a formal diagnosis.
It really makes you wonder. We've all heard about, autism in children, but what about the adults who are navigating the world with this? And maybe they don't even realize it. That's what we're going to unpack today. And it makes you stop and think, yeah, how many times have you met someone and thought, like, huh,
Hey.
they're different, but you can't put your finger on it.
Right. And often these are people who have become incredibly adept at blending in, masking, their autistic traits just to try to get by in a world that isn't really, it's not really set up to understand those needs.
So let's talk about that. This masking thing, I have to admit, it's always been kind of a head scratcher for me. How does that even work?
So think about it this way. Imagine constantly having to be aware of every social interaction, every unspoken rule, every sensory detail that most people don't even think twice about. Now imagine feeling like you have to consciously control your response to that all the time, just to fit in.
Wow. That sounds mentally exhausting, like running a marathon in your head every
It
day.
can be incredibly draining. And here's the thing. A lot of adults who are good at it, they might not even realize they're doing it. It's like second nature at a certain point, right? It's just a way of surviving in a world that often feels really overwhelming.
What's the cost of that, though? I mean, that's what happens when you're constantly trying to be somebody or not.
Well, the impact can be significant. We're talking burnout, anxiety, even depression. It's like running that marathon with no finish line.
Oh man, it's almost like you're carrying this hidden weight that nobody else can even see. How in the world do you even begin to sort of unravel that, right?
Yeah.
Especially we're talking about adults here who've maybe spent years, decades even adapting this way.
Well, that's where it gets really important to understand, the nuances of
Mhm.
how autism can actually present in adults.
Yeah.
And, you know, uh, one of the most fascinating and frankly overlooked aspects is this idea of gender bias in diagnosis.
Yeah, I was really struck by that when I was reading through the research for this. Tell me more about what you mean by that gender bias.
So for the longest time, people thought of autism as like a primarily male condition,
Hmm.
which means all the diagnostic criteria, the things doctors are looking for, they were usually based on how autism looks in boys.
Oh, so are you saying that women experience it differently?
Not necessarily differently, but there can be these subtle variations,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Women with autism might be better at mimicking social behaviors,
Oh,
or they might have special interests that are more, I don't know, more socially acceptable. And so it masks their struggles.
it's like you're trying to solve a puzzle, but half the pieces are missing because the picture on the box is wrong. No wonder it's so hard to figure out.
And that's just one part,
Hmm.
right? The research also mentions how other things that can go along with it, like anxiety,
Yeah.
that can make it even harder to see, especially in adults.
Oh, so it's like a double whammy. You're dealing with the autism, but it's hidden under all this other stuff.
Yeah, and recognizing that's like the first step. Understanding that someone might be like, "Hey, I need help with anxiety,"
Hmm.
or "I'm really depressed," which of course those are very real things.
Hmm.
But the autism, it's like it's underneath it all.
This is where it seems like, having those open conversations with your doctor or therapist, whoever it is so important because if you don't know what to look for, you might miss the bigger picture.
Right. And it's not, I mean, awareness is key not just for people who are, who might be on the spectrum. It's for everyone. Because think about it. Even if you don't get a formal diagnosis, just understanding how autism can work. I mean, that in itself can help us all kind of, be more understanding, have more empathy. Just navigating the world.
So you're saying even if I don't personally know anyone on the spectrum, this is still relevant to me.
Absolutely. Because chances are you've met people who their brains just work a little differently,
Mm.
you know? They might understand things or
Yeah.
social cues or whatever it is, just in a way that's not, I don't know, what we think is typical.
Okay, I get that. But how does
Yeah.
that actually play out, you know, in real life?
Okay, so picture this. You're at work and someone's constantly being told like, "Oh, you're so blunt," or like, man, you have no social skills. But what if that person's actually struggling with social communication, which is a very common thing in autism? It changes how you see their behavior, right?
Instead of judging them, you're seeing like the struggle underneath.
And that can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Because you could write someone off as difficult or offer support. You can build a workplace where everyone feels welcome
Mhm.
instead of pushing people away.
Yeah.
It all starts with understanding.
And this is what's so interesting to me. It's bigger than just, oh, do you have autism or not? It's like you said, neurodiversity, just
Well,
accepting that everyone's brain is wired a little differently. And that's okay.
exactly. And when we accept those differences and we make space for people to be themselves without hiding, without masking who they are, that's when we can really see what people are capable of.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you there. But that's a big change from how a lot of us are used to doing things. How do we even start to get there?
Well, awareness is a great start, which is what we're doing right now.
Mm.
But it also goes a little deeper. I think we need to really examine what do we think is normal, even?
Hmm.
What's acceptable? And who gets to decide that?
It's like we're always trying to fit, square pegs into round holes. Like everybody's supposed to fit in this one box of how to act and how to be.
And it really limits us, not just the individual, but all of us. When we start to embrace neurodiversity, we're opening ourselves up to so many different ways of thinking and looking at things. We'd miss out on that otherwise.
This makes me think about all those times in my own life where I've had those aha moments. When something finally clicks and it just changes everything about how you see things.
And for some people, getting that autism diagnosis later in life, it really can be like that. It's like a framework. You can finally understand your experiences, the good and the bad. It all kind of makes sense.
It's like you said, you're finally seeing things clearly, and you didn't even know it was blurry before.
Yeah. And getting that diagnosis even later in life, it can be, I don't know, it can be really powerful. Validate. Of course, it's complicated too,
Yeah,
right?
it's not like a magic wand. What happens after that aha moment?
Well, that's where, having good support is so important. Therapists, support groups, those autism organizations, that can make a world of difference.
Because even though, like we said, understanding is huge,
Yeah.
knowing you're not alone, that's huge too.
Exactly. And that's really what I hope people take away from this. Whether autism directly affects you or not, even just knowing this stuff, it can make a difference.
It's like we can all learn to kind of meet each other with more empathy and understanding, challenge those ideas we have about, what is normal anyway,
Right.
and just celebrate the fact that we're all a little different.
Well said. And remember, even just small acts of understanding, they can make a big difference.
So true. Well, I guess it's time for us to come up for air on this deep dive. This has been really something else.
Absolutely fascinating.
Listeners, thank you for coming on this journey with us. And remember, just because this deep dive is over doesn't mean you have to stop exploring this stuff. There's a whole world out there. Until next time.